First time we ever met him, I swear to God, it's a true story. First, all sitting in the meeting room waiting for him. He's about a minute late. He's obviously creating that, like, you know, none of us ever seen him before. He just walks in, right, and he walks over to the flip chart, and he just flips over the chart. And he says, that's the team for tomorrow. If you're in it, well done. If you're not, don't bother fucking coming to see me. Don't think you're good enough. If you do want to come and see me, there's only one fucking winner. Now off out and train. And just walked out, and we all just went, it out.
You are listening to House of Football, brought to you by Sports Joe and William Hill.
Hello, I'm Eric Lalor. Welcome to House of Football with Sports Joe and William Hill. I'm delighted to say we have friend of the show back in the studio again, all the way from Cork, Mr. Damien Delaney. And joining us via the witchcraft that is live satellite, we have former Irish international and Premier League footballer Matt Holland. Chaps, you're very, very welcome to the show. Great to have you both on.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, Eric.
What we're going to do is we're going to have a quick review of the weekend, the big talking points that were the weekend, and we'll just get straight into it. Yesterday was a brilliant day of football for me. Anyway, I watched football from 12:30 till 8 o'clock, and the missus couldn't say that because it's all podcast research, you know. But the lower leagues playoffs, the Premier League relegation dogfight was all about yesterday. Both you lads would have had experience of playing in playoffs. What's it like playing in a playoff? I'll start with you, Matt. What's it like? You played in a brilliant playoff final against Barnsley. Can you tell us a little about your memories around that time?
Yeah, well, I actually have mixed memories of the playoffs, really, because I joined Ipswich in 97. I think they were in the playoffs the year before I joined. And then we had two failed attempts at the playoffs in the semi-finals. We lost to Charlton in my first season. Then we lost to Bolton the following year on away goals, before we eventually beat Bolton to get into a final at our third attempt in the playoffs. And then, of course, winning at Wembley in the final against Barnsley as well. So I guess if you're going to get promoted, I think doing it at Wembley in front of sort of 90-odd thousand is quite a nice way to go up, in all honesty. But it took a little bit of a while to get to that point. We had a few, let's say, failed attempts before we eventually got over the line and into the Premier League.
Damien?
Yeah, I mean, everyone always says that the playoffs and the playoff final is the best way to get promoted, but it also could be like a very, very sad day because, you know, it's a 46-game season, you get through the semi-final, you get to a final, and then it's all or nothing on one day, and it's very, 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 very nerve-wracking, I suppose, but, like, you know, it's incredible when you win it, you know, to be, like Matt said, 90,000, Wembley, your life changes, you know, you go from being a championship player to a Premier League player, and like everything changes, you know, financially, you know, your profile, everything just changes in an instant, and that's what that day means and carries. It's an awesome way, but I get nervous now just thinking back.
Really? Yeah.
Oh man, I would never want to go through that again. No, I always look back at myself and go, "How did you get through it?"
Yeah.
I think that's a great point. I think it's probably the most nervous I've been before an individual game. You know, even playing in the World Cup and stuff. I think that moment where there's so much riding on it for the club, for the supporters, for you as an individual, it just felt the most immense pressure. And so I can totally understand where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, we played in the cup final in 2016, right? And we lost it, and obviously losing the cup final is
heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking. But you still wake up the next morning a Premier League player.
Yeah.
Right?
Good point.
Whereas, like, if you lose a playoff final, you wake up the following morning, you're staring down the barrel of another championship season.
Another 46 games.
And another 46 games. And it is relentless in the championship. It is the toughest, physically, mentally, emotionally. It's the toughest league you can play in.
It is it is the most expensive, the most lucrative game on planet Earth, really, that championship playoff, really, isn't it? Because, like, the difference between staying the championship and the Premier League is humongous, both for the club and the city. So we just moved back onto the Premier League over the weekend. The big talking point for me, obviously, as a Manchester United fan, was David De Gea. Lads, I'll throw it out there to you. Is it time for Manchester United to get an upgrade on David De Gea, or where do you stand on that?
I think they would like to get an upgrade on him, but Man United have more pressing needs. And Man United, depending on the takeover situation, you know, if you're start addressing needs like David De Gea, and David De Gea is an issue, but at the minute it's probably a secondary issue. You know, you have to sort out the centre-forward role at the moment. You probably have to sort out the midfield role as well at the moment. Probably want another centre-back now as well when you look at Varane and his profile. So they have more pressing issues. David De Gea can wait. In an ideal world, absolutely, they would move him on. But a new goalkeeper, what does it cost you for an elite goalkeeper? 80, 90 million pounds. United don't have that to throw at a secondary problem.
Matt?
Well, I think he's out of contract in the summer as well. So it might be that he doesn't sign a new deal. We don't know whether he's going to still be at Man United next season or not. I agree with Damien that a striker is probably their transfer priority this summer. But when I watch Eric Ten Hag's teams, and ultimately he wants his teams to play out from the back. He wants them to play into Lisandro Martinez when he plays Luke Shaw at centre-half and play through the lines. Now, if that's the case, then David De Gea isn't the answer, because I've seen so many games this year where he's unable to do it. He even did it and caught out a couple of times against West Ham. I was at the Brighton game last week as well, and he just bypassed the press from Brighton, went long. That's not what Eric Ten Hag ultimately wants to do. He wants these teams to try and play out from the back, and David De Gea isn't the answer. But there are more pressing issues at the club, and a striker is the number one target for him in the summer rather than a goalkeeper.
But like you look at him now, right? And he's out of contract. He's going to leave on a free if they let him go. I mean, even if he's under contract, they could look at selling him, because I'm pretty sure some Spanish clubs or some European clubs, so you could recoup some money, and that might go against a new goalkeeper. The fact he's out of contract, I think, hurts them, because he's going to walk away for free, and then you got to shell out another 80 million. So his wages are going to go to the new guy that comes in. I don't think Man United have that kind of change lying around.
Yeah, he does free up a substantial part of the wage bill, because
but that's going to go to the new goalkeeper that comes in.
Yeah.
So it won't really.
Yeah, 350
it's
grand.
It's quite an enigma really with David De Gea, because you look at it, he's on course for the Golden Glove as well. He's had the most clean sheets in the division, and yet I think he's got the third worst save percentage.
Yeah.
So you sort of weigh it up. It's sort of a strange one, isn't it? Because ultimately he has made match-winning saves, match-winning moments this season, but there are too many errors creeping into his game, too many individual mistakes that have cost Man United points, and as it was against West Ham as well. So it's quite enigmatic, isn't he, David De Gea? But I am with Damien as to say that Man United got bigger transfer priorities than they have a goalkeeper.
What's it like, both of you, I'm asking this to both of you lads, to play with a keeper who is suffering with a lack of confidence, is prone to errors, he's having a bad run of form? Does that affect the team that's playing? Is that in the back of your head as a defender, Damien?
Absolutely. Yeah, you know that, someone gets a shot away, scuffs one through your legs, and your head whips round, and you can see it almost in slow motion, and he's not getting there, and it's just going to creep in at the far post, Whereas the opposite, when you have a goalkeeper that's in good form, you tend to be in a better place. You're thinking, well, if he gets a shot away, he's going to have to do well to beat my goalkeeper. But when everything on target seems to be going in, as a defender, you're like, oh no, here we go. Like anything goes in, and then one-on-ones, and then you start questioning when the ball goes over the top. You start thinking, is he here? Is he not here? Am I going to turn my head around in and he's going to be 5 yards away from me? Or is he going to be on his line? So absolutely it plays into your confidence. Yeah.
It does, and that would affect you as a defender, I suppose, Dave, because as you said, like if you're thinking that if anyone takes a shot on target, it's going to end up with the back of net. So you're like, I can't let any shot come in, so you have to defend every single shot, which isn't always possible, obviously.
Absolutely. That's what confidence can drain away very, very, very quickly.
Matt, not asking you to name any names. Were you ever in a situation like that yourself in your career, where you were playing with keepers out of form and it affected the team as a whole?
Definitely. There's a real trust issue with goalkeepers and a communication as well that's so important. I won't name goalkeepers that have been a problem for me, but I'll name one goalkeeper who was so dependable. And I always judge goalkeepers on the mistakes that they make, or the lack of mistakes that they make, and how consistent they are. And Shay Given was that goalkeeper. When I played with Shay, you always felt confident that if the opportunity came for the opposition, that he would be there, make a save. You always knew when he was coming off his line. You knew, because he was a vocal goalkeeper as well. But you just had 100% faith and trust in him that if there was a problem, if you'd made a mistake, he would be there to save you as well. So rather than naming someone who was a problem, I'll name someone who, the other side of it, didn't make very few mistakes through his career, Shay Given, and I had 100% trust in him.
They're a strange bunch of goalkeepers, aren't they, Matt? I mean, you think of all the goalkeepers that you've played with, and they're definitely
they're a unique breed.
Absolutely, yeah. You very rarely meet a normal goalkeeper.
It's a unique position, though, as well, isn't it? Because you make a mistake, and ultimately you're going to get punished, and it gets highlighted. So you have to be a really strong character, I think, to be a goalkeeper as
big
well.
Big personality,
you make a mistake on pitch, sometimes you can get away with it. It makes a mistake as a goalkeeper, usually you get punished massively, and that's a goal in your net. So, but I think goalkeepers generally are really strong characters.
They're strong characters, but as you say, maybe as Damien alluded to, they're slightly unhinged.
Oh, absolutely, they're definitely. So you look at some and go, "What are you on about?"
Who's the craziest goalkeeper you've ever played or played against?
Can you think they all got their own little weird idiosyncrasies? You know what I mean? They're just like strange, just sitting their own because they train on their own as well. You know,
right, yeah.
You come in the morning, they disappear for an hour while you're doing bits and pieces, and then they kind of come over at the very end. And I think that mentality is like it's almost an individual sport being a goalkeeper.
Yeah.
You're not part of you are part of the team, but like you spend so much time away, you know, and then they have their goalkeeping coach who defends them to the hilt and any moaning, so like it is almost like two different teams within a team. If you know what I mean.
Yeah. It's a good point. Speaking of someone else who had a difficult weekend, and he has been a shining light throughout the Premier League this season, but Eddie Howe. Eddie Howe's done an incredible job at Newcastle this season. They played Arsenal on Sunday, and Arsenal, like I have to hold my hand up and thought that was one of Arsenal's most impressive performances of the season, given the circumstances around it. But Eddie Howe came out in the press conference afterwards and bemoaned Arsenal's time-wasting tactics when the stats are there to prove that Newcastle are the biggest exponents of time-wasting in the Premier League. Was there a level of hypocrisy there, Damien?
I just think it's just, when you lose a big game like that,
you're emotional.
And you probably woke up the next morning and read and looked at what he said and we thought, well, maybe I shouldn't have said all that because it's bringing unnecessary attention on Newcastle. No, he should just taken the defeat in the manner that it was. He was beaten by the better team, and Arsenal have proved over the season that they have been the better team. But obviously nobody likes losing.
Yeah. Matt?
Often managers say things, don't they, to try and deflect away from the result, away from the performance. Seen it plenty of times in the past, and maybe Eddie was trying to do that as well. But it is incredibly hypocritical. I mean, I'm an Eddie fan. I like Eddie a lot, and actually he made his debut in the same team as me at Bournemouth, believe it or not, many years ago. But just look back to early in the season. I think Newcastle were heavily criticised for doing exactly the same thing at the Emirates when they drew 0-0. I just thought Arsenal managed the game brilliantly. They slowed it down. They had breaks in play. They did what they needed to do to win the game. I thought it was a thoroughly professional performance from them. I think Eddie sort of got it wrong, but maybe he was just trying to deflect away from the result a little bit. Yeah,
he's protecting his team, I suppose. You just mentioned there you made your debut, Eddie Howe, at Bournemouth. Did you think then, even back then, Matt, he'd shown signs that he'd become a manager? Was he a real thinker of the game back then, even?
I had absolutely no idea that he'd be a manager because he was so quiet. Honestly, He came into the team. He was a few years younger than me. He was a thinker and he was an intelligent lad, but really, really quiet. So I had no inkling that he'd become a manager or that was in his thinking to become a manager. But he was, as I say, he was an intelligent boy. So he never had any doubt that he'd be maybe a coach or something like that. But in terms of management, I never expected him to do what he has done.
And would you? The time wasting issue, Damien, is that spoken of in a dressing room before a match? Is it like, lads, if we're ahead, slow down, walk to the throw-ins, walk to the set pieces? Is that? Or is it just...
I don't think that's something you need to remind professional players of. Right. That's kind of just a given. Yeah. That, if you make it to a certain level, that you know how to see out a game.
It's footballing IQ.
Absolutely, everyone knows it. And I mean, there might be a young kid who might be a bit wet behind the ears, and all of a sudden goes over a throw, and you see him sprinting for it. You might go, "Hey, kid, you're going to learn." But walk, take your time, tie your shoe. Just wander, pretend you're going to another ball boy to get the ball, and he doesn't have it, and just really just trying to take rather than time waste, just more to take the edge off the game, because especially if you're away from home, the away fans have their voices are up, they're in the ascendancy, you're hanging on, you're defending for your life. You just want to just slow that down, take it off the boil, so to speak.
I was going to say, I had Alan Pardew as manager, and he was constantly reminding the team to sort of be professional away from home. Take your time, walk to set pieces, walk to throw-ins, just take the sting out of the atmosphere, particularly when we're away at a hostile environment. He would always remind the players of that. He used to have a kangaroo court on a Friday, and if say, for instance, someone didn't bring someone down, it ended up leading to a goal, we'd have to have a vote and decide if they should be fined or not. if they weren't, that sort of stuff. Or if someone, it was 0-0 in a game, you've run to take a throw and you'd taken a quick one when you shouldn't have done, and you'd get the players to decide whether they should be fined or not for that sort of thing. So he was constantly reminding the players that they had to be really ultra professional away from home and try and take this thing out of an atmosphere when it was really loud.
You played on the party as well, didn't you, Damien?
Yeah. None of that carry on with us, though.
No.
We didn't have any kangaroo courts. No, we'd not.
Why was that? You wouldn't let him have it?
I don't know, really. I think we were a good professional bunch. I think he'd come in. But you know what? Just going back to the time wasting thing. Like in the World Cup, remember we saw this 10, 12, 14 minutes. That's gone out the window now again, right? And I do think that there is an element of teams feel like they'll be rewarded. I remember the Champions League final, wasn't it? Militao went down, got back up, went off, came back on. He must have took 4 minutes off the clock and 4 minutes went up, and that was just on him alone.
Yeah.
There should be at least 8 minutes of injury time. But I think once teams know that, if you can take a certain amount of time off the clock and the opposition aren't going to get it back on the back end in injury time, then you're going to do it. Whereas I think in the World Cup, people realise if I start cutting corners here and so down, there's only 14 minutes of injury time go up, and nobody wants that. So it did help to speed the game up. So I don't know what happened with that, whether it was just put in the bin or what the story was.
What's your opinion on that, Matt? Do you think there is an issue with time wasting in modern day football? And as Damien alluded to there at the World Cup, it seemed to have been addressed, but it's been dismissed again. Would you like to see World Cup type timekeeping being brought into the modern day?
Yeah, I think I probably would, to be honest, as a spectator now. Ultimately, you want the ball in play as much as possible, and you want to watch as much football as possible. I think it's. I think when you're talking about it, I think Newcastle actually the lowest, aren't they, in terms of the ball in play in a game? It's 52% of the game.
Yeah.
That the ball's in play in Newcastle matches. Well, you want that number to be much higher than that. Just over half of the time that you're actually watching football. So definitely there's something that needs to be done about it. It's a difficult one on how you manage it, whether you have a clock that you stop and whenever ball goes out and all that sort of stuff. I think that's really difficult to try and manage that. But I actually quite liked it. I was at the World Cup and thought it worked really well because, as you say, you weren't seeing teams delaying or taking the time over stuff because they weren't allowed to, because all of a sudden when they saw sort of 10, 12 minutes go up at the end anyway, if they'd done it, then the consequences were there. So I thought the World Cup, it worked really well. It's
a strange one, all right, because the World Cup usually is the where they start off these new rule changes or new refereeing types, and we would have thought that from that World Cup that would be universal across the world of football, but obviously it isn't, and I wonder why. I wonder have commercial companies had an opinion saying, listen, we need to get to an ad break quicker, we can't be having 10, 11 minutes of injury time.
Maybe
it could be
FIFA probably just haven't implemented it, or maybe they've looked at it and they said it didn't really work or it was unnecessary or whatever. I don't know, but there was this thing a few years ago. I remember reading an article on Van Basten came up with this 2:30 minutes and a stop every time the ball goes out of play. Every time the whistle blows, it stops.
Okay.
So because the ball is only in play in the Premier League an average of something like 57, 58 minutes.
Right.
And the reason I know this is because when I was at Crystal Palace under Tony Pulis, we held a record for the lowest amount of time the ball was in play. Something like 47 minutes or something like that. I don't know if we still hold that record. But I think it's between 56, 57 minutes, something like that is the average. And they were saying like 2 30-minute halves where
of
it
just
stops,
total football,
where you're getting exactly 1 hour of football, right? As opposed to giving teams like us the chance to have 47 minutes of football.
Right.
But I think that was shelved as well at one point.
Yeah, but that seems like a good idea, doesn't it? Thinking outside the box a little bit.
But that's an extreme change to football. I
suppose, as you said, if it's two halves of half an hour of total football, you still could be there for over an hour, but you're stopping the clock every time the football is in play.
You could be there for 2 hours.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. Speaking of gamesmanship and big characters, lads, the biggest managerial appointment over the last couple of weeks has been Big Sam returned to the fold at Leeds. Obviously, he had a baptism of fire away to City, wasn't expected to get anything out of the game, didn't get the result, but they didn't disgrace themselves either. Lost 2-1. Your opinions on Big Sam coming back into the fold and his ability to get Leeds out of the mire that they're in?
Oh, listen, Big Sam's got every chance of doing it. I think yesterday was a seismic day. I think that up until yesterday, even losing at City, he would have gone in that changing room and he'd have been highlighting the positives. Listen to me, everything I told you, look what it nearly got us. We could have won that, and all of a sudden it helps him with the players to buy in. Then there's a hammer blow yesterday. I mean, all three of them winning.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden they're right back in it, and now he's right up against it. He could just be caught for time. He could have just run out of time, Big Sam. But I'm sure he will get a couple of results. But now they're playing catch up. Whereas before, yesterday, it seemed to be in their own hands. That if they won their games, they'd be fine. But he will galvanise them, and he will give them the best chance possible. It's just whether he was been given enough time or not.
Matt, what's your opinions on Big Sam and like the notion of bringing an old school experienced manager into the fold of a modern day football club?
I think, to be honest, it just highlights the need for any side to try and stay in the Premier League for the financial rewards that it brings. You can understand why changes are made late on in the season, just to try and, as Damien said there, try and galvanise a group who are clearly low on confidence at Leeds. He did come close at the weekend. City should have been out of sight, really, but they held on in there, got that goal late, and then all of a sudden there's a bit of pressure on City. But they've got some difficult games. I think Newcastle up next, is it, for Sam? You wouldn't put it past him, though, to get a result. We've seen what Neil Warnock's done in the Championship with Huddersfield and where they were when he took over. He sort of called himself a 3 or 4 month manager now. He said he's waiting until, isn't he, February next year, to get his next job. Maybe Sam will be happy with that as well. He's got his $3 million payoff or whatever he does if he keeps them up, and then do it again sort of next March or April. Or
available for hire for any struggling clubs. Yeah.
Exactly. Just pay me $3 million to keep a team up. I'll
his interview was brilliant when he got the job. But a lot of people would look at that and go, "That's Sam blowing his own trumpet." It's not. What all he's doing there, right, is he knows he's got a short window. So when Sam comes into a football club, he wants to get to know the players need to get to know him. He wants to feel everybody out, find out what the best way of playing is and who can do what for him to help him achieve what he wants to achieve. But he hasn't got that luxury, with the short window, 4 weeks or whatever it is. So he needs everyone to buy in at the click of a finger. And his interview, you look at him, he was eyeballing that reporter. But I tell you what, he was speaking to two groups of people. One, I think, was the players at home, right? As in, he was saying to them, "I'm the man. I can't have anyone, second guessing me or giving it time. Will I buy into him? What's he like? I need them instantaneously into me." And that's what he was saying. "I'm the man, you listen to me." I think secondly as well, he realises that they won't do it unless they have the supporters on board.
Yeah.
And I think he was talking to the supporters as well, because I think Leeds as a football club probably has this notion that they're historic, Revy and all the big names, and we're not a firefighting club. We don't turn to people like Sam Allarydce. We're above that almost. And I think he was talking to the fans, I'm the man. You got to believe in me as well. And he just wants to get those two groups of people on board and just really, almost like a religious thing, just you believe in me because I'm me, right? And he had to do it that quickly. So everyone laughed at his interview, but Sam came in, did the same firefighting job with us.
I was going to ask about that, Damien.
So
you played under him.
I've had him, I know him.
What's he like?
A big character.
Yeah.
But that's what he's like. It's my way or the highway. But at Palace, he had time to figure out what was what and get everyone to buy into him. At Leeds, he doesn't. So I think he was just finding the best way for everyone to bow down and worship him and listen to him, because Sam won't be able to do what he wants to do unless everybody buys in.
Right.
Fans, players, staff, everybody. And the best way to do that was the interview he gave, and everyone just went, "Oh, Sam." It was a bit like the Mourinho special one type interview, you know what I mean? Where everyone just goes, "Geez, maybe he is special."
Yeah.
So Sam is not, I sat with him and spoke with him.
Would you go for the point with him, Damien?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But he's a big character, but he's not. He doesn't blow his own trumpet. He doesn't hype himself up like people think he does. Everything he does is calculated. He's such a smart man. He would never say something like that, as in, "I'm the man, I'm here to keep Leeds up and a cigar out and I don't care if we," you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He thought that's the best way for everyone to look at him and go, "I'm going to follow you."
I suppose the media like to paint this caricature of Sam Allardyce, that he is this old school type manager. But when you think about it, he was pretty much a pioneer in football. Wasn't he one of the first managers to come into the football with data analysis, with nutrition, with going up into the stand and watching matches? You would have played against Sam Allardyce teams in the past, Matt. What's your opinion on Big Sam? And has he been given a raw deal by the press in general?
I think he probably has. When you look at his record and what he's achieved in the past, I think he probably has been given a raw deal. And maybe some of his methods and methodology is a little bit old school at times. But just look at his coaching staff that he's brought in as well. obviously Robbie's gone in there. Carl Robinson, both young coaches. I mean, Carl's someone I've got to know quite a bit as well, and he's a deep thinker about the game as well, and so he puts a lot of trust, I think, in his coaching staff as well. I've played under managers who are managers rather than coaches. I mean, I don't know what Sam's like. Damien will be able to tell you more. He might be. He looks to me as though he's the manager, and he has people that do the coaching for him. Obviously, he'll pick the team and he'll set out the tactics, but his coaching staff are the ones that then execute that. But he looks as though he's the man, he's the gaffer, he's in charge, and he lets people and delegates to people around him to try and help in certain aspects as well. So, look, he might just get it. He might just do it, Sam. It wouldn't surprise me if he kept Leeds up.
And did you have any preconceptions about Sam before he came into Palace, or were you just? And then what was it that won you over, Damien? You bought in, kind of thing.
His first meeting with us.
Was it? Yeah.
Oh, fuck it, yeah. Like his first meeting, first time we ever met him. I swear to God, it's a true story. First, all sitting in the meeting room waiting for him. He's about a minute late. He's obviously creating that, none of us ever seen him before. He just walks in, right, and he walks over to the flip chart, and he just flips over the chart. And he said, "That's the team for tomorrow. If you're in it, well done. If you're not, don't bother fucking coming to see me. Don't think you're good enough. If you do want to come and see me, there's only one fucking winner. Now fuck off out and train." And just walked out, and we all just went, "Fuck it!" Everyone just went, "Oh,
this fella means business."
Everyone just went, "Oh," and straight. That was it. That instant moment is like establishing dominance.
Right.
I'm the man. And by the way, just to echo what Matt said there, he's nail on the head. Sam won't micromanage. He gets staff.
That he trusts.
Huge staff, and they obviously know what he wants, and it's their job to deliver it. He sits on high, looking down on everything. If there's a disciplinary issue or there's a media issue or something, he steps in. But when you see Sam stepping in, step back because he's coming hard, So that's what he is. He's just the captain. Nobody messes about with him. Whatever Sam says, Sam does. And then you respect the staff as well, because if you moan at his staff and stuff like that, they won't say anything, but Sam will come in and he won't even say, just look at you. I heard what you did today, and that's not, and then you go, "Oh, sorry." So you know what I mean? So he commands the whole football club.
He really does. But lads, moving on to we touched out the playoffs there. Both of you played for Ipswich in your careers. Do both of you have fond memories of your time at Portman Road? And are you absolutely thrilled that they're back in the Championship again, scoring free flowing football under Kieran McKenna, an Irish coach who they got from Man United. Your opinion on Ipswich and your time there?
I loved Ipswich.
Yeah,
fabulous football club. It was just I was there in a tumultuous time where we just couldn't seem to get it going. But incredible place to live. Incredible fans, brilliant stadium, bigger football club than a lot of people will actually give it, would recognise, Matt obviously had a great time there and have much fonder memories than me, but I just remember the playing surface of Portman Road was always impeccable. The training ground is beautiful, lovely, lovely people. It's just a nice place to be. And I was just sad that it didn't pan out the way that we all wanted to.
Matt?
Honestly, it's taken off this year, the last 18 months, 2 years, in a way that I couldn't have imagined. They've already sold 21,000 season tickets for next season.
Wow.
Which I think is the most they've ever sold. They're getting bigger crowds than when we were in Europe, when we were in the Premier League. This is in League One. I went to a game, I think it was Port Vale home on a Tuesday, and there's 28,000 there. And you're thinking, where are these people coming from? But they're coming because there's new ownership, there's new investment. They've spent money on the playing staff. They've spent money on the infrastructure around the place. And they're improving all aspects of the football club. And where they've invested, I think, the best is in the manager, in Kieran McKenna. He is absolutely different class. I'm actually an ambassador for the club now, so you can understand why I'm speaking so passionately.
I was wondering why you were selling
it. But I'm certainly not trying to sell him, because I tell you what,
you've lost all impartiality, Matt. We can't take anything you say seriously now.
I know, but honestly, I'm not trying to sell him, because he is that good. Seriously, he is different class as a coach. I've been on the training ground, watched him coach. Watch the way he works. The players absolutely love him. You talk about man management. There's not a player there that doesn't like the way he goes about his business.
And he does what all good coaches do, man. He makes players better.
Yeah, he's improved everybody at the football club, and everybody has gone up a level since he's been there. So, as I say, long may it continue. I hope they do well in the Championship next season and they have another go at getting promoted again. And it wouldn't surprise me because I think there'll be investment again. I think there'll be another 3 or 4 coming in the summer. But they're a good team to watch, and they're a team to watch out for in the Championship next season, because a lot of the players that they've got anyway are Championship players who have dropped to League One to try and sort of bounce back. That's exactly what they've done. And now they've got the opportunity to go again next year. And it wouldn't surprise me. You know, we've seen teams do it in the past. Norwich have done it. I think Southampton have done it, back-to-back promotions from League One to the Premier League. I'm not sort of saying they're going to do it next year, but they'll have an opportunity to do it. And there'll be a team that will be a good side to watch next season.
And obviously, if Kieran McKenna is as good as you say he is, and the facts prove that he is, obviously the worry for Ipswich fans and ambassadors like yourself, Matt, will be that the bigger clubs will come in and look for his services.
Exactly that. That is our biggest concern, to be honest, because people will be monitoring closely. And if a Premier League job comes up, he's an ambitious man. He wants to be managing at the highest level, and so it'd be very hard for him to turn that down. But this is his first job. This is his first opportunity, and I think he appreciates that being given the chance to manage. I mean, he's still very young, isn't he? What is he, 36?
Yeah, he's only
something like that. So he's got such a career ahead of him. But I'm sure that people will be monitoring what he's been doing.
It's such a good club, right? That as long as he feels the club want to get in the Premier League and the opportunity is there, and they're backing him and they're giving him all the tools that he needs,
they show him the ambition.
Why would you want to leave?
Right.
It's such it's a fabulous football club, and if it got back in the Premier League, it wouldn't be out of place at all. There'd be nothing to do. It is a Premier League club down the divisions. It's ready to go. So he'll only ever want to go, I think, if he feels that his ambition is being limited. And obviously, Mr. Ambassador here will tell us about.
Has there been any inquiries, man?
It's a shame I'm not there. I could have brought the Ferrero Rocher, couldn't I? It was the ambassador.
Nice work, man. Nice work.
I actually don't like the title, to be honest. I mean, but I'm sort of just helping out around the club. But no, the ambition is there. The ownership group have as I say, really backed what the project is, and they're spending money all around the place. You know, they've made the stadium look better. They've ripped the pitch up already since the last home game of the season. That's already underway for a new playing service next year. They've already done the pitches at the training ground as well, because they were some of the stipulations that Kieran wanted. He wanted the pitch to be absolutely pristine. You talked about the pitch at Portman Road. It's always good. Well, he wants it even better. I think they're doing the undersoil heating. They're spending a fortune, and so the ambition is there to try and get back to the Premier League.
So they are backing him, which is great to hear. Matt, could you just go back to your time at Ipswich? And the team that we went through the playoffs beat Barnsley in the final, got into the Premiership, and the very following season finished 5th, like 3 points off Champions League places. Like, what was it like playing in that Ipswich team, and who were the big players for you in that season?
Well, to be honest, as I say, we were a team that was built over a number of seasons. It wasn't just a team that was put together and we got promoted. I mean, we'd been in the playoffs. I'd been in it a couple of times before we eventually got promoted. I think we were in the playoffs the year before I joined as well. So 4 years running, it was a team that was knocking on the door of the Premier League anyway. We were close. But it was a team that had been together for quite some time, and so you lose 1 or 2 in the summer, bring 1 or 2 in. There weren't too many changes, but it was just like little tweaks. Marcus Stewart made a big difference when he came in the January. We got promoted. He scored at Wembley as well. He was a big player for us up top, and obviously you'll probably know what's happened to Marcus. He's been diagnosed with MND, and so he's which is an awful thing, and we've got a big charity thing for him next week as well, big charity game, and so wish Marcus all the very best in his fight against that horrible disease. But it was a team that had been built over a number of seasons, and we had good players.
So were you confident, Matt, going into that new Premier League season that do you know the way the newly promoted teams are always the ones that are said to be, they'll be going down, they'll be relegation favourite. Were you quietly confident that you had a team that were going to do well that season?
You're never sure. You don't quite know what level you're at, but we were a team that we were a team. I think that's what I would say. We weren't individuals. There was no real superstars in the group. We lost the first game of the season at Spurs, and we didn't play badly, but we made a couple of mistakes, got punished for it, and we thought, wow, this is what the Premier League's all about. You sort of open your eyes to it and realise that little step up in quality, any mistake you make is punished. The first home game we played Man United and we drew 1-1, and I think that was the moment we believed that we could compete, because I think just done the treble, 99, and we're talking a year later here, and we drew with the team that had done a treble, 1-1 at Portman Road. That was the moment I think that we all sort of believed that we could manage at this level.
Yeah.
We had some great wins along the way. We got applauded off the pitch at Everton. I think we'd beaten 3. We won at Anfield. Drew with Arsenal, drew with Man United. We had some great results and some great moments. But we were a team, and that was the big thing. We had a group of players that sort of, we were as one. You'd trust them all in the trenches with you, and now you build that bond over a number of years, and if we haven't seen each other for 10, 15, 20 years, we'd still come together and be a good group. Jim Magilton was a big part of that as well.
Yeah.
Northern Irishman, a big character. He was a brilliant bloke to have around. Tony Mowbray, who was doing brilliantly at Sunderland, was there. Mark Venus, John McGreal. We just had really good, solid
pros.
footballers.
Yeah. You mentioned Man United there, Matt. You just drew 1-1 in your second game of the season. That was obviously a really brilliant Manchester United team. I read somewhere about, I don't know whether you can tell us whether it's a funny story, but another jersey swapping story, but this time with a certain Ruud van Nistelrooy. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I did. So I playing for Ireland. I think I'd got a Van Nistelrooy shirt when we played Holland. So which was great. My kids sort of loved it. I wasn't a big shirt swapper, to be honest. I didn't get too many jerseys, but got a Van Nistelrooy shirt playing for Ireland against Holland, and then I don't know, probably about 6 months later or so. And anyway, we're coming off at Old Trafford. We've probably been beat. We usually got beat at Old Trafford, and I get a tap on the shoulder, and it's Van Nistelrooy, and he says, "Oh, swap shirts." I'm thinking, heck, Van Nistelrooy wants to swap shirts with me. Wow. Van Nistelrooy, he said, you got my shirt in the game. They said, and your name, Holland. I come from Holland, so just want to. He didn't want it because it was my shirt. He just wanted it because my name
because
was
it said Holland on the jersey.
He wanted the name Holland on the back of the jersey.
You could have just got one made up.
So honestly, I was made up. Van Nistelrooy tapped me on the shoulder for a shirt. All he wanted was the name on the back.
Matt, you don't have to tell people that. You tell people that Ruud van Nistelrooy wanted your jersey because he regarded you as a serious footballer. That's what you tell everyone. You're so honest and modest.
I can milk that
Damien,
story.
did you any jersey swapping stories yourself? Did you get any big jerseys?
I had a few, but not. I want a big one for it to you just send a kit man over and see if you get one,
okay, so you wouldn't actually do that.
I wouldn't do that. No, but that's kind of the thing now.
I remember Titus Bramble. So we played. You talk about Ipswich. We qualified for Europe, and we played Inter Milan. We beat them 1-0 at home, and then we played them away from home, and we got absolutely stuffed. I think 4-1. Christian Vieri scored a hat trick after about 55 minutes, and he just looked at the bench and went, "Sub, I'm done." Walked. And Ronaldo, Brazilian Ronaldo, came on for him. Oh, wow. And we had Titus Bramble at the back, and literally for the last half an hour of the game, Titus Bramble never left him alone. So that when the final whistle went, he could get Ronaldo's shirt. He was right next to him as soon as the final whistle went, so he could get his shirt. But I was going spare. I was going mental in 10, 15 minutes to go. Go away from him. Just get back in your position. So he literally followed him everywhere, just so that when the whistle went, he got his shirt.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. So, Damien, you said you would allow the kit man to do that for you. Was it just because of the fear of rejection or just the embarrassment?
It wasn't. I just wouldn't. I didn't like to bother someone. I wouldn't really, to be honest. The only. So I just said to the kit man afterwards, I said, "Go in and see if you get me some shirts." So the kit man would usually come in then with 4 or 5 shirts.
Oh, okay, right. So that was just a done thing kind of thing. Oh, right.
And he'd come in, he'd say, "Look, I got 4 or 5," because he'd just go to their kit man and say, "Just give me a bunch of shirts," and they'd just sweep them up off the floor, and there you go. And then you kind of have a quick look, but you get charged for shirts.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
So the actual price of the jersey you charge on your wages.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
these days it'd be what, €70 or €80.
I think it was about £50. So when you wages, you get your wage slip, you'd have jerseys out. So that's why I said the kit man. I'm spending €50 after a game. No chance.
Matt, you touched upon it there, that amazing Ipswich, the fact that he's beat into Milan at Portman Road 1-0, went to the San Siro, got beaten 4-1, Christian Vieri hat-trick, Ronaldo coming on for Vieri. But playing in the San Siro on a European night, Matt, what was that experience like? And did you go into the game with confidence, having beaten them 1-0 at Portman Road?
I think we probably went in too overconfident after beating them at Portman Road. It was amazing. The actual ground at the time, the San Siro, just needed a bit updating, really. It was a little bit tired. But we took, I think, 10,000, 12,000 fans. And it was the Ipswich fans, really, that generated the atmosphere. But it was the home game that stands out more, to be honest. The fact that we beat them at home. You know, Ipswich have never been beaten at home in Europe.
Ever.
One game, though, I'd say, is it, mate?
Well, no, should they won the UEFA Cup, didn't
No,
they?
you're going back late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
I think it's like
Arnold Muren.
29... It's 30 odd games at home in Europe and never been beaten. It's an amazing record. So I'm glad we were able to keep that going by beating Inter Milan. But yeah, it was unbelievable. When you set out in football, you're setting out to try and test yourself against the very best, and that's you get as high in as the levels that you can possibly do. And obviously playing in Europe, playing against those top teams, playing against the top players, that's where you want to be and that's where you want to test yourself. You know, I'd like to have spent longer at the top than I did, but you know, to have got to that moment and got to that point, it's it's a big thing, and that's what you set out to do when you start in your football career, to try and get to the top levels and play against the top players.
And you mentioned that pinnacles of players' careers often involve major tournaments, and you, of course, played at the World Cup in 2002 and scored. And to this day, the only man on earth who's responsible for me spilling a pint of Guinness at 8:30 in the morning in a pub in Dublin, because the Irish government gave out special licensing laws because the time zone, obviously. So we were in the pub watching that Cameroon game at 8 a.m. I was in a pub in Finglas, and you scored points everywhere, but never so happy to be covered in alcohol at 8:30 in the morning, Matt. So thank you for that. What was your memories of
pleasure.
that day and the goal itself?
It's some moment, to be honest. You dream of playing in a World Cup. You absolutely dream of it. To score is probably beyond your wildest dreams. You know, I could never have envisaged what happened really, and scoring in the game. We actually we'd been a bit disappointed in the first half and hadn't played particularly well. And Mick's mantra going into that tournament was no fear. And when we walked into the dressing room before the game, there was sort of banners all around the dressing room. No fear, no fear, no regrets. It was no regrets. And anyway, he came in at half time, and I remember Mick sort of saying, "That's all we're having at the moment is regrets, because we haven't really got going." Obviously, what had happened previous to the tournament, maybe there was a slight hangover in that first half. But
what happened, Matt?
No regrets and all. What happened? We'll pass over that quite quickly. Yeah. We can move on from that.
It's old ground now, yeah.
Yes, it's very old ground, yeah. But he said all we've got at the moment is regrets. And we went out second half and we were a different team, and we pushed and Kev put a terrible cross in, which was badly cleared. And it came to me, and actually when I've watched it back, I mean, I didn't see Robbie. I think Robbie was to my right hand side. Could have played Robbie in, but when it's sort of coming back to me, it's all in slow motion, really. I can just picture the ball coming to me, thinking that's bouncing nicely. It's set up for a shot first time. It was something that I'd sort of practiced over the years by volleying balls at my mum's and breaking sort of numerous photo frames and vases and all sorts. And just volleying was sort of one of my techniques, really, that I really enjoyed. And it just came to me perfectly.
And you couldn't have caught it sweeter.
Well, I didn't need to put too much power on it. All I had to do was get the contact, because it was coming at me, and all I needed to do was get a good contact. And thankfully, that's exactly what happened. And then, for a moment, you lose yourself, don't you? And you think, what you're doing? You've just scored in a World Cup, and sort of ran off. And I ran off to the right-hand side of the goal, ran behind the goal, and then remembered sort of where my family were and where they were sat. And they were in that sort of far in that corner. So that's when I was trying to shrug Robbie off my shoulders and trying to wave to my dad was there. My mum, my wife was there. 2 boys were there. I think one of my boys was asleep. He thought it'd been an early start, and so he got the train early, and I think he was asleep. My missus, she had a can of Coke. She threw it over everyone, and that went everywhere. But no one cared, and I was able to see them at that moment as well. So it's nice to be able to share that moment with them as well. But it was it's what your dreams are made of. To be honest.
Do you remember that game, Damien? Do you remember where you were even watching that game?
I have a newfound interest in that World Cup in 2002 because I spent a lot of time with Gary Breen and Kenny Cunningham at the moment, But obviously, as a fan on the outside looking in,
who are you?
but I was doing a show with Breen a while back, and he said to me he was going to Cork for some wedding because that's where Breen's family are from, and he said to me, can I grab a lift down with you after the show? I got to go to, I think it was Bandon or somewhere in Cork. He was going where the wedding was. And I said, yeah, absolutely. Well, I tell you what, I chatted for 3 hours all the way down the road to Cork. Breeny's he never shut up the whole way down. But it was just all about the 2002 and his personal situation and the whole free transfer thing.
Into Milan.
And there was stuff I never knew. And then we were talking about the World Cup. And obviously Kenny is Kenny. You listen to him, going on and on and on as well. So just getting an inside perspective from a point of view of stuff that you wouldn't know and things that I wouldn't have thought of, or things you forget because you only remember Matty's goal and stuff, the big things, but all the underlying stories that were going on into it and the issues they had, obviously with the thing we're not allowed to speak about. So
I also remember from that game against Cameroon. I think Cameroon were they the first team ever in the World Cup to wear sleeveless jerseys.
I think they were a sort of strange jersey, weren't they? They were sleeveless, but they had something that sort of slightly came over the top of them as well. I mean, I looked ridiculous. I swapped shirts that game with Mark Vivian Foe, who sadly is no longer with us. And I just looked ridiculous wearing it after the match because he sort of filled it quite nicely. I'm sort of trying to put his jersey. I'm thinking I made a big mistake with that, to be honest.
Matt, just touching on your international career and obviously one of the biggest characters. 2002. We glossed over it, and rightly so. But Roy Keane obviously was at the heart of all that. You said you agreed with some of the points that Roy made regards Saipan, but also another thing that what Keane raised in his book was he had a go at you about singing "God Save the Queen" at Wembley. How did you feel about that? And have you ever had a chance to speak to him about that since then? Explain your reasons, or what was that all about?
Did you say we've run out of time and that we've got to go? Did you say that? I'm sure that's what you just said. I've got to go. Have I? I've got an appointment. I think.
The connection's breaking up there, man. I can't quite. You're dropping out.
Definitely.
Is Gary Breen around?
Yeah. Kenny will talk about it because he never shuts up. Look, I've got a lot of time for Roy. I'm growing up. I was a Man United fan, and Roy's one of the best players that's ever played for Man United. It was a privilege to share a pitch with him. He was a born winner, a leader of people, and just a brilliant footballer. He's not the most technically gifted footballer I've ever played with, but you add all these attributes together, and he was immense. I mean, his character, his willingness to take the ball in tight areas, to take the ball marked, to put his stamp on a game, to drive the team forward. He was outstanding, and so I've got a lot of respect and time for Roy. The stuff at the playoff final, I was slightly embarrassed by. I can't hide the fact that I was born and raised in England.
Yeah.
But my love of playing for Ireland, it was honestly, I can't tell you, second to none. I mean, I still speak to lots of former teammates now, and so I'm slightly embarrassed by that.
But I don't think, as you said, Matt, I don't think any of us could ever question your loyalty towards Ireland, because every time Matt Holland put on an Irish jersey, it was never less than 100% given. I think we all saw that. I just thought it was an odd. I just wanted to get your opinion on that. Matt, just want to bring you back to your debut. Not for Ireland, but for Charlton against Plymouth, and only discovered recently that you are colourblind and you had an issue because Plymouth were wearing green jerseys. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
It's a good excuse for giving the ball away, isn't it? Colourblindness. My first game for Charlton. So it's funny actually because colourblindness, there's a lot of men suffer with it. It's 1 in 12 men are actually colourblind, so it's quite a lot of people. I think it's 1 in 200 women. They're the ones that carry the gene and pass it on, apparently. My debut for Charlton, we were on a pre-season tour to Plymouth. We were in red and they were in dark green. And I honestly couldn't tell the difference between the two shirts. And so I was, so for 5 minutes into the game, I'm thinking, I don't quite know what I'm going to do here. And I sort of ran over to the touchline. Alan Kirbyshire was in the stand, but Mervyn Day was the number 2. And I ran over to Mervyn Day and I said, Merv, I've got a problem here. I said, I'm colourblind and I can't tell the difference between the two sets of kits. And he just looked at me and went, "What the have we signed?" But there was literally nothing I could. He said, "You're just going to have to get on with it." I mean, it was a pre-season game; it didn't really matter. But that's the one only time that it's happened on a pitch that I've had a problem,
right?
In telling the difference between the two kits, and it's never really been a major issue. A couple of times commentating, I've found it really difficult when shirts have clashed. But generally, it's not been too bad, and they always were really careful in colours of bibs in training and all that sort of stuff, just to make sure that I didn't have a problem. But there's a lot of men that suffer of it. 1 in 12 men, apparently.
So that explains all the blind balls you spin around the corner.
Exactly.
Into the space.
Exactly, that's what I said. When I give the ball away,
I didn't think you'd love spinning the ball around the corner.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't be a great snooker player, Matt?
No, I have to ask, and people stitch me up as well. I've played and the brown and the reds, actually. It's the brown and the reds in snooker that look quite similar. So, and so I'm always asking, is that the colour? Is that red? It's a bloody nightmare.
Brilliant. Listen, Matt, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on House of Football. I know you have to go off now and do more media stuff because you're a very busy media guy. But Matt Holland, thank you very much for joining us this week, and we'll talk to you again very soon.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure. Good to talk to you both.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, Matt. Okay, so that was Matt Holland, a brilliant Irish international and a man with a brilliant Premier League career. Damien, we've got a couple of minutes left on the podcast, and I want to talk to you about Champions League, the Real Madrid, Manchester City, and the Bernabeu, and then the Milan derby. Can Madrid not do the unthinkable, but I suppose everyone is seeing Man City and Pep and Haaland as this unstoppable machine. Are Real Madrid, due to the pedigree they have, are they the one club that can stop them?
Absolutely. We're at the semi-final stage of the Champions League. Every team is capable of beating them, and the coaching and the level of coaching, the level of tactics are going to be on show. The level of trying to limit the opposition's strong point and highlight weaknesses, you're going to really try and see that tonight. But I think when it comes down to it, I look at Manchester City and the way they've handled themselves this season. They've been in control of themselves. Yeah. There's nothing too wild. I'm not sure, or I hope Pep doesn't get too clever tonight and he tries to win the game so that the storyline afterwards is about him and his tactics and what he did. He just needs to set his players up with a clear game plan and let them go and do it. Trust that his players are going to go and do it because they look in a good place and they have Erling Haaland. So now he doesn't need to force the issue with a false nine and internal runs from wide players and, dragging Real Madrid's players out. The rest of the team can focus on being nice and solid. Gundogan's in a good place at the minute as well. You've got Mahrez or Bernardo Silva on the right side. They have options. They have a nice game plan. Just trust that the implementation of that game plan is enough to beat Real Madrid as opposed to him trying to come up with something new and throwing Real Madrid off their kind of the kilter. So, I think it's City's year. I do. I just like the way they look. They look imperious at the moment. They really do. I mean, even a lot of the games that in the Premier League, they look as if they're playing a second gear. That they have a couple of gears to go through. But yeah, I suppose if there was any club that could put it up to them, it would be Real Madrid. Listen, Luka Modric, Toni Kroos, Rodrigo, Benzema. They could just show up tonight and just be like, Vinicius. Sorry, would be just like incredible, and they have that in the locker. Yeah, But I just think that. In the last tie when Bayern really threw that City, they never wobbled. They just, might have covered up on the ropes and absorbed a couple of blows, but they caught the punches and they were never really in trouble. And then they just waited for their moment to pounce. And I think I get that feeling with them at the moment. I think they'll be able to swallow anything that Real Madrid throw at them. And then they've got weapons at the top end of the pitch. For them to do damage, and I think that if it gets into a swinging match, I do think that City will hit it an awful lot harder. So that's how I feel, how I see it. But it's Champions League semi-final, so anything is possible. Yeah. You don't get to the semi-final being a bad team, I suppose. Damien, if Manchester City do win this treble, do you think it's a more impressive treble than the Manchester United treble of '99? I'm not one for comparing They're two different times, two different eras, two different teams who were set up to be a certain thing. What Manchester United achieved was outstanding. Man City, if they achieve it, it'll be an incredible achievement. But
do you think that's probably the same as trying to compare Ferguson with Pep? You know, they're from different eras, they play different systems.
Well, I mean, I think they overlapped a little bit, you know, but Pep obviously had one of the greatest teams ever in his Barcelona side. I do think, regardless of what he says or what anyone else says, the fact that he's not won a Champions League without Messi will bother him. And has been bothering him, you know. And the fact that he went to Bayern and couldn't get it done. I know he's been at City. I think he's at 6 or 7 years or something. He's at City now.
Yeah,
a good chunk of time. Yeah, you know. And he spent
it's his longest spell at any club.
And he spent a lot of money, you know. And he's finding it very, very difficult to get that Champions League. But I think just to rubber stamp his greatness, that sounds a bit harsh. He's obviously a great manager.
Yeah,
but you know, to put him in the upper echelon, the real top, you know, Ancelotti, you know, Mourinho winning multiple Champions League with multiple different teams, multiple different ways. I think he needs it. You know, I think he really does. I'm not going to go into comparing the teams because it's too difficult.
Yeah.
And anything I say to you can throw 5 different comments back at me, and I have to go, yeah, well, that's fair enough. You know, it's too hard to compare.
You obviously think I do my research, Damien. Fair play to
no,
you.
but like, you know, but if I said to you, like, oh, those cities is more impressive because you know the times we live in, you know, the money that's available, you know, teams that can win it are different.
Yeah.
Whereas you could say the same about Manchester United in '99, but it's difficult. Both managers, both teams are brilliant, and I hope City win it.
But you think the winners of the tie between Real and City
No,
would
I don't
win it?
at all.
The Milan derby, who would you see
I
there?
think AC will come through it.
Really, yeah?
Yeah, obviously Leo being fit is going to be an interesting one.
He looks like an incredible footballer.
Listen, but he's their outlet, he's their X factor, their wildcard, so to speak. And I know he's touch and go whether he plays tomorrow night. He went off after 10 minutes the weekend with what looked like a groin injury, I think it was. But they haven't ruled him out. But I think he should be back for the second leg, worst case scenario. But I think if AC Milan come through it in a one-off tie, that's why I'm confident with City over two legs, 180 minutes. I think they'll work it out. But in a one-off tie, you go behind, all of a sudden panic can set in, you know, and it can be difficult. Or if you go ahead, do you sit back? Because if you go ahead, all of a sudden the trophy's right there.
Yeah,
you know, and me and Matt were talking about playoffs and stuff like that. You know, hitting the front. You know, in the cup final in 2016, we hit the front.
Yeah,
you know, and I remember thinking to myself, like,
we're so close. It's
so close. Yeah. And there's a tendency just to snatch at it as opposed to just letting it play out. So you're always reminding yourself, and I think it would be the same for these guys in the Champions League final, that, you know, if you go in front or if you go behind, it alters. Tonight, they'll always be the second leg, you know, so even if you go behind, okay, don't worry, we lose 1-0 tonight, we can always get it back to the Etihad. Back to the Etihad, right? Tonight, yeah. Back to the Etihad, you know. So, you know, there's that element of, okay, we're in control here. I don't know, what was your question?
But in a one-off game, you give Milan a chance.
I think AC Milan, are looking good. I got a funny feeling about them.
Yeah,
they're tough at the back. Tomori's doing really well at the minute. Kier is doing good. They got a good midfield set up, and then obviously Inter are a pretty good team too. But I just think AC will come through it.
Yeah. 2 old Premier League strikers in
Dzeko and Lukaku.
Yeah. And then also for AC Milan.
You got Mkhitaryan.
Mkhitaryan as well,
for Inter, you got Damien.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You got
3 ex-Manchester United.
And Dzeko thrown in the mix as well. There's someone else as well who was doing the stuff last night.
Was it Giroud? Giroud's with AC Milan.
Giroud's with AC Milan. I think Inter was someone else as well. Yeah, it's gone from my head. But I think AC Milan got a good goalkeeper too in Onana.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so I just think that, like, you know, I just fancy AC Milan. I think they just, again, they look composed, they're poised. And I think...
And they've pedigree as well.
And I think they'll deal with Inter. You know, I think they'll just about deal with it. The home advantage as well.
Yeah. That's going to be a weird one, isn't it? All right then, listen, that's all we have time for this week's House of Football. I'd like to thank my guests, Damien Delaney and of course Matt Holland. We'll be back again same time next week in more chat about football. But for now, download us, subscribe to us, tell your mates about us and do what you know is best. Thank you.
You've been listening to House of Football, brought to you by Sports Joe and William Hill.